It did not begin with a human voice. It began with a sound, buried in the digital noise of the earth. In a windowless room north of Tel Aviv, a signals intelligence analyst named Rona sifted through the planet's data stream. She was not listening for anything. She was listening to everything. Her station at Unit 8200 was a nexus of seismic, acoustic, and satellite data, vacuumed from the orbit over the Iranian plateau. She was looking for patterns. On a Tuesday, at 03:17 a.m., a pattern found her. Deep beneath the Parchin military complex, a site supposedly sanitized by international inspectors, a sensor registered a tremor. It was not an earthquake. It was too localized, too sharp. It was the signature of a high-pressure, contained event. Rona cross-referenced it with atmospheric telemetry. At the same moment, a satellite monitoring thermal output registered a fractional, near-invisible spike in ground temperature at the exact same coordinate. It was containment. Something had been tested, and the heat shielding had almost failed. She pulled the file. Parchin was the old wound, the place the world had agreed to forget. But the data was fresh. She ran a diagnostic algorithm, one designed by the nuclear physics department at Tel Aviv University. The algorithm filtered the tremor's resonance, searching for the acoustic fingerprint of specific materials under stress. The result that came back made her lean forward, her breath fogging a small circle on the cold screen. The signature was unmistakable, not a conventional blast. It was the resonance of high-grade miraging steel and tungsten alloys under extreme pressure. This was the physics of implosion. This was the drumbeat of weaponization. Rona typed a single flagged message to a secure server, addressed to a man known only as Erez, the deputy director of the Mossad's SOMET, Recruitment and Operations Division. The subject line was clinical. Ref. Project AMAD, dormant. The body was simpler. The ghost is walking. Within 30 minutes, the digital whisper had become a roar inside the command center at Mossad headquarters, the Midrasha. The hidden lab was no longer a theory. It was active, and a lab requires a high priest. The hunt for the how was over. The hunt for the who had just begun. The file on Dr. Arash Kaviani was thick, bound in a plain gray cover, and kept in a biometric vault. To the world, he was a man of quiet distinction, a professor of fluid dynamics at Sharif University, a published poet, a widower, a man who favored gray suits and walked with a slight academic stoop. He was the acceptable civilian face of Iranian science. Inside the Midrasha, they called him the architect. Erez, a man who looked more like a restless banker than a spy master, stood before a digital whiteboard. Kaviani's image filled the screen. "You are not looking at a scientist," Erez told the assembled heads of Caesarea, Covert Operations, and Kaidan, the Spear. "You are looking at a logistician of genius. He is the man who solved the procurement problem. He is the man who mastered the cascade." The file detailed a different Kaviani, the man who, in 2003, took the fragmented, clumsy nuclear program, Project AMAD, and broke it into 1,000 microscopic pieces. He had distributed it across the country, hiding physics in tractor factories, metallurgy in medical supply warehouses, and triggers in university basements. He had built a hidden lab the size of a nation, invisible because it was everywhere. The old guard, Erez continued. Fakhrizadeh, the men we knew, they were the first chapter. Kaviani is the epilogue. He is not a fundamentalist, he is a patriot. He believes a nuclear Iran is a stable Iran. This makes him more dangerous than any mullah. He is rational. The intelligence from Rona's seismic whisper confirmed their worst fear. Kaviani wasn't just maintaining the program, he was accelerating it. The Parchin tremor was the test of a new, miniaturized implosion lens, the kind one needs for a vehicle-mounted device. The question was not where the lab was. The lab was Kaviani's mind. The data, the blueprints, the simulations, the critical paths, did not exist on a server. They existed in his head. He was a walking, breathing, state-level threat. "The diplomats are failing," Erez said, the light of the projector catching the dust in the room. "The sanctions are a joke. Politics has given us no solution. Therefore, we must provide a technical one." He looked at the face of the Kidon commander, a woman with cold eyes and the call sign Yael. "You must find the lab," Erez said. "And when you find it, you must find him. This is not about sabotage. This is about removal. You are not to break the toy. You are to remove the one man who knows how to build it. Kaviani is the target. He is the nuclear brain." Tracking Dr. Kaviani was like trying to nail Mercury to a wall. He lived under the blanket of the IRGC's, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, most sophisticated counterintelligence unit. His life was a sterile corridor of predictable, protected movement. Home, university, a secure ministry building, home. His cars were armored, his routes randomized, his digital footprint non-existent. He was a ghost. To paint a target like this, to build a complete 24/7 pattern of life, Mossad couldn't rely on technology alone. They needed a human eye. The operation, codenamed Quantum Leap, began not with a bang, but with a bribe. The Caesarea department activated a long-dormant asset, a scion, a non-Israeli Jew living in Tehran, embedded in the city's bureaucracy. This asset, Cyrus, worked in the municipal traffic management department. He was not a spy, he was a clerk, but he had access to the city's CCTV network. For 2 months, Cyrus sat in his dusty office, running diagnostic tests on the traffic cameras positioned along Kaviani's known routes. He fed the video, byte by excruciating byte, to a relay station in Azerbaijan. In Tel Aviv, a team of analysts watched Kaviani's world in grainy monochrome. They learned nothing. "He's clean," Yael, the Kedon commander, reported to Erez. "He doesn't use unsecured phones. He doesn't meet anyone. He doesn't deviate. He's a perfect asset." "Nobody is perfect," Erez countered. "If he won't show us a weakness, we must find someone who can." The focus shifted from Kaviani to his shadow, a thick-necked IRGC driver named Hossein. Hossein was Kaviani's first and last line of defense. He was also a man with a vice. Satellite surveillance and signal intercepts revealed Hossein's regular unsanctioned trips to a specific tea house known for illegal gambling. Mossad's Tehran station, a skeleton crew of Katsas, field officers, living under deep cover, moved. They didn't approach Hossein. They approached the tea house owner. They didn't threaten him. They made him an offer. A Katsa posing as a Turkish businessman offered to buy out Hossein's considerable debt. The next week, Hossein was called to a back room. He was terrified, expecting a beating. Instead, the Turkish businessman handed him an envelope of cash. "A gift," the Katsa said in fluent Farsi, "from a friend who admires your loyalty." Hossein was confused. "What do I have to do?" "Nothing," the Katsa smiled. "Just keep driving. But perhaps leave your personal phone on, the one your wife doesn't know about. We might have business in the future." The trap was set. Hossein was not recruited. He was compromised. His phone, a cheap burner, was now Mossad's window. Its microphone was their ear, and its GPS was their beacon, riding shotgun with the nuclear brain. The lab was not one place. It was a route. Kaviani's genius was in compartmentalization. The program's components were scattered, inert, and meaningless on their own. Only he knew the map. Only he knew how to connect the dots. Hossein's compromised phone gave Mossad its first real lead. Every third Friday, Kaviani's armored motorcade would leave Tehran and drive 2 hours south to the industrial city of Kazvin. The phone's GPS would go dead in the same spot, a remote industrial park filled with defunct factories. The location was a black hole. "We need eyes inside," Yael stated in a brief. "Signal intelligence is blind." This was a job for Neviot, Mossad's elite ground reconnaissance unit. The plan was audacious. A 2-man Neviot team, traveling on forged German passports as industrial waste inspectors, flew into Tehran. Their Scion network provided them with a cloned utility truck, complete with fake Kazvin municipal logos. For 3 days, the team parked outside the industrial park, blending in with the urban decay. Their waste inspection tools pointed at one specific warehouse. The building was guarded by IRGC, but it was low-key. It looked like a storage depot. The Neviot team wasn't looking at the building. They were sniffing it. Their primary tool was a transportable laser spectrometer, aimed at the building's ventilation shafts. As air was expelled, the laser passed through the plume. The light that reflected back was analyzed, breaking down the molecular content of the air inside. For 48 hours, the readings were banal: dust, diesel fumes, solvents. Then, on the third night, they got a hit. The spectrometer spiked. The analyst in the truck read the data, his blood running cold. It wasn't just one thing, it was a cocktail. Trace elements of high-purity graphite, aerosolized solvents used in coating electronics, and the unmistakable definitive signature of beryllium. Beryllium is a difficult toxic metal. It has few industrial uses, but it is the single most effective material for a neutron reflector, the component that tampers a plutonium core, focusing the explosion and turning a fizzle into a city-leveling detonation. This was not a lab for research. This was a factory for triggers. The Nevime team packed their equipment, dissolved into the city, and were smuggled out of the country by Kurdish partisans by sunrise. They left a single encrypted burst transmission behind them. In Tel Aviv, Erez looked at the spectrometer report. The hidden lab now had a physical address, and Dr. Kaviani, its architect, had just signed his own death warrant. The decision was made. The operation, Quantum Leap, moved from intelligence gathering to termination. This was a Kidon operation. Yael, the commander, would lead the team herself. She was a ghost in her own right, a fluent speaker of 4 languages, a master of disguise, and a pragmatist in the art of state-sponsored death. She entered Iran not as a soldier, but as a problem. She flew into Istanbul, where a Katsa specializing in identity met her. She traded her Israeli passport for a French one, her dark hair for a blonde wig, her tactical gear for a bespoke business suit. She became Juliet, an art dealer from Lyon. From Istanbul, she flew to Dubai, then took a short-hop flight to Shiraz, deliberately avoiding Tehran's main airport. She was a tourist, visiting the ruins of Persepolis. In Shiraz, she was met by a scion who ran a small tour company. He handed her the keys to a modest rental car and a welcome packet. Inside the packet was a prepaid phone, a set of Iranian license plates, and a key. The Tehran station was not a high-tech bunker. It was a 5th-floor apartment in an aging concrete high-rise in a middle-class neighborhood. It had been purchased by a Mossad shell company a decade prior and had sat dormant, a sleeper flat. Its only virtue was its anonymity. Yael spent her first 48 hours inside, never leaving. She checked the apartment's systems. The walls were lead-lined to block electronic eavesdropping. The pantry was stocked with high-energy food, and hidden beneath a false floor in the bathroom was the kit. It was not a trove of heavy weapons. That was too risky to smuggle. The kit was for creation. It contained high-grade chemical precursors, precise electronic components, and machined steel casings. It was a bomb maker's laboratory. Her 2-man team, a logistics specialist and a weapons tech, would follow, filtering in separately as a German engineer and a British academic. Yael sat on the balcony as the call to prayer echoed over the smog-filled city. She was the tip of the spear, a foreign body inside the artery of the regime. The nuclear brain was going about his day, teaching, planning, building his bomb. He was protected by an army. Yael was protected by a concrete wall and a fake passport. The imbalance was the point. For 3 weeks, Yael's team rebuilt the painting of Dr. Kaviani. They had Hosseин's phone, but it was too risky to use actively. Instead, they used it to validate their own surveillance. They shadowed the motorcade. They mapped the Qazvin route. They observed the university. They became part of the city's background noise, and they found the same frustrating, sterile pattern. The man was a machine. He has no vices, Yael reported to Tel Aviv via a scrambled data burst. No mistresses, no gambling, no secret meetings. He is a professional. This makes the accident or internal dispute scenarios impossible. Then find a new scenario, Erez replied. Find the human. Yael turned her focus from Kaviani the target to Kaviani the man. She had the team dig into his past. His wife had died of cancer 5 years prior. He had no children. His only living relative was a sister in Germany. His poetry was published under a pseudonym. The team's logistics specialist, Asher, found the crack. Asher had been conducting near-field surveillance, posing as a day laborer. He noticed a pattern within the pattern. Every Thursday afternoon, Kaviani's motorcade would alter its route home from the university. It would take a 20-minute detour through an old, wealthy neighborhood. Yael went herself, disguised as a shopper. She watched. At 4:15 p.m., the three-car motorcade pulled up. The IRGC guards fanned out, creating a sterile bubble on the sidewalk. Dr. Kaviani got out of his car. He walked 10 paces, alone, to a small traditional Bastani ice cream shop. It was an old family-run establishment, famous for its saffron and pistachio ice cream. For 10 minutes, Kaviani sat at a small, wrought-iron table on the sidewalk. He ate a single scoop of saffron ice cream. He read no papers. He took no calls. He simply watched the people pass. His guards stood, tense, 30 feet away. At 4:25 p.m., he would nod, stand up, and get back in his car. It was the only human, sentimental, and unprotected act in his entire life. Yael sat in a cafe across the street, sipping bitter tea. She watched the nuclear brain, the man redesigning the balance of power in the Middle East, savoring a childhood memory. He was vulnerable. The weakness wasn't a vice. It was nostalgia. Yael returned to the safe house. The plan formed in her mind, cold and precise. The accident was back on the table. Not with a truck, with a table. The political clock was ticking louder than the operational one. In Geneva, diplomats were smiling. The P5+1 and Iranian negotiators had reached a breakthrough. A new, revised version of the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was on the table. The media hailed it as a new era of diplomacy. Sanctions would be eased, inspectors would be readmitted. In Tel Aviv, the mood was funereal. Erez stood in the Prime Minister's office, the saffron ice cream plan in his briefcase. The PM, a man exhausted by coalition politics, looked at his spy master. "You're telling me to blow up the peace process," the PM said. "For one scientist?" "I am telling you," Erez countered, his voice low and steady, "that the peace process is a diversion. It is Kaviani's greatest shield. He wants the inspectors to come. He'll show them Parchin. He'll show them Fordo. He'll let them swab every surface, because the lab is not there. The lab is in Kazvin, and the blueprints are in his head." Erez laid a single photo on the desk. It was Yael's surveillance shot of Kaviani at the Bastani shop. "While we sign treaties," Erez said, "this man is building a bomb. The treaty gives him time and money. Our intelligence, the beryllium signature, is definitive. He is not researching, he is producing. He is 3 months from a trigger assembly. After that, he is a year from a deliverable warhead." "And if you kill him?" the PM asked. "They'll blame us. The Americans will be furious. The new treaty will collapse." "Yes," Erez didn't hesitate. "And the program will be set back a decade. Kaviani is the brain. He is the only one who knows the whole map. Without him, they have 1,000 puzzle pieces and no picture." A long silence filled the room. The PM stared at the photo. The nuclear brain looked like a sad old man eating ice cream. "The Americans must not know," the PM said. "The Europeans must not know. If this goes wrong, Yael's team is disavowed. You are disavowed. I will personally stand at the UN and condemn the rogue operation." "That is the arrangement," Erez said, nodding. "And it must be clean. No collateral." "Yael is the best," Erez said. "She understands. It will not be a car bomb. It will be surgical. It will look perhaps like a terrible accident." "Do it," the PM said, turning back to the window, "and pray he is not replaced by someone better." Erez left the office. The operation was greenlit. The Geneva dilemma had been solved by the cold calculus of prevention. The ice cream plan was elegant in its simplicity. It was also, Yael realized, a fantasy. She and her team watched the Bastani shop for another week. The IRGC security detail was not sloppy. They were tense. They knew this was their point of maximum vulnerability. They swept the area 30 minutes before Kaviani arrived. They watched every rooftop, every parked car, every person who lingered. "We can't get a device close to the table," Yael's weapons tech reported. "They're too good. By the time he sits down, they have eyes on every angle. A bomb drone, a sniper, a car, all impossible." The plan was for a small shaped charge to be placed under the specific table Kaviani favored, but they couldn't get to it. "We can't hit him from the outside," Yael concluded in a coded message to Erez. "The security is too hard." "Then you must hit him from the inside," came the reply. The mission parameters changed. They were no longer just a Kedon team. They were now a psychological operations unit. They had to break the perimeter. They had to find a 13th apostle, a Judas, to betray the target. They went back to the file on Hossein, the driver. He was compromised, but not an asset. They needed leverage, something more powerful than gambling debt. The team's logistics specialist, Asher, dug into the driver's life. He found it. Hossein had a 7-year-old daughter with a rare congenital heart defect. She was on a waiting list for a complex surgery, a procedure only available in Germany or the United States, and she was running out of time. This was the lever. The Turkish businessman who had paid Hossein's debts reappeared. He met the driver on a dark street, far from the tea house. "Your daughter is sick," the Katsa said, dispensing with pleasantries. Hossein's blood froze. He reached for a weapon that wasn't there. "Do not," the Katsa said, holding up a hand. "I am not here to threaten you. I am here to help. We have arranged for a specialist at the Charité hospital in Berlin, a visa for her and your wife, a private jet, all paid for." Hossein stared, dumbfounded. "Why?" "We admire loyalty," the Katsa repeated. "And we are men of business. We need a small service." I cannot," Hossein stammered. "They will kill me. They will kill my family. They will kill your family if you don't," the Katsa said, his voice turning to steel. "But your daughter, she will die for certain without this. We are offering her life. What is your service compared to that?" The moral calculus was absolute. Hossein broke. "What do you need?" He whispered, his face buried in his hands. "The package," the Katsa said. "Kaviani carries a briefcase. The football, it never leaves his side. We believe it contains his communication codes in a hard drive. We need it. He never lets it go. Next Thursday, at the ice cream shop. You will open the trunk to check a tire. You will place the briefcase on the passenger seat. You will leave the car door unlocked. That is all." Hossein, the 13th apostle, nodded. He had just sold out the nuclear brain to save his daughter. The plan was now a hybrid. It was a heist, not an assassination. The new goal: retrieve the brain's work. Stealing Kaviani's football was, in many ways, more damaging than killing him. It would give Mossad the entire map of the hidden lab. Thursday, 4 p.m. The street was chaos, but controlled chaos. Yael's team was in place. She was the distraction, dressed as an elderly woman struggling with grocery bags. Asher, the logistics man, was on a motorcycle, engine idling, 2 blocks away. The weapons tech was their overwatch, monitoring the IRGC guards' frequencies. The motorcade arrived. The IRGC team fanned out. Kaviani's car, driven by Hossein, parked. The guards scanned the area. They saw an old woman, Yael, and a few shoppers. They relaxed, but their eyes kept moving. Hossein, his hands shaking, got out. He muttered to the lead guard, "The tire pressure light. I must check." He walked to the back of the car, opening the trunk. As he did, he took Kaviani's briefcase from the floor of the back seat and placed it on the front passenger seat, as instructed. He left the passenger door unlocked. Kaviani got out. He walked his 10 paces and sat at his table. The Bastani owner brought him his saffron ice cream. The operations clock started. They had 10 minutes. Yael began her move. She tripped, spilling a bag of oranges across the sidewalk directly in the path of the 2 lead guards. It was a classic, low-tech diversion. The guards were annoyed. They turned to help the old woman, their eyes off the motorcade for a critical 3 seconds. In that instant, Asher, on his motorcycle, rounded the corner. He wasn't speeding. He was cruising like a local. He pulled up alongside Kaviani's sedan. He didn't stop. He simply reached out, opened the unlocked passenger door, grabbed the briefcase, and was gone. It took less than 2 seconds. By the time the guards had helped Yael up, Asher was 2 blocks away, merging into traffic. Yael, muttering thanks, shuffled off. Hossein, his face pale, closed the trunk. He got back in the car. At 4:25 p.m., Kaviani stood up. He walked back to his car. He got in. He didn't notice the briefcase was gone. He was, for that moment, just a man who had enjoyed his ice cream. The motorcade pulled away. 20 minutes later, Hossein's personal phone buzzed. A text message. It was a single image. A boarding pass for a Lufthansa flight from Tehran to Frankfurt in his wife's name. Yael, in the safe house, unzipped the briefcase. It was not a hard drive. It was not codes. It was 2 binders of poetry and a copy of the Financial Times. The nuclear brain was too smart. The briefcase was a decoy. The real lab, the real data, was still in his head. The plan has failed, Yael sent to Erez. He played us. The reply from Tel Aviv was immediate. The objective has not changed. The method has. He is moving his work. The Cosvin facility is active. The window is closing. Quantum Leap is now Red Harvest. Terminate, with prejudice. The failed heist had a catastrophic consequence. Kaviani knew. He didn't report the briefcase stolen. Hossein's check of the tire, the spilled oranges. He had put it together. He didn't report it to the IRGC because to do so would be to admit he had been compromised. Instead, he acted. The ice cream routine stopped. The university route was scrubbed. Kaviani vanished. Hossein, terrified, was useless. His daughter was on the flight to Germany, but he was now a dead man walking. The Mossad team lost their primary surveillance source. The nuclear brain was in the wind. He's moving the lab, Erez briefed the crisis team in Tel Aviv. The Cosvin facility is being evacuated. He knows we found it. He's taking his work and going deeper, to a new site, probably a hardened bunker. Then we have lost, the PM's aide said. No, Yael's voice crackled over the secure comms from Tehran. We have not lost. We have forced his hand. She was on the ground, cut off, but still hunting. He is predictable, she sent. He is an architect. He will not leave his life's work in the hands of his subordinates. He will personally oversee the transfer of the core. The team's last, desperate gamble was the Cosvin-Tehran highway. They had no idea when Kaviani would move, but he would use that road. It was the only viable route. Yael and her 2-man team left the Tehran safe house. They were burning their cover. This was now a one-way mission. They drove to Cosvin, posing as a road crew. They had the cloned utility truck from the Neviot team's earlier mission. For 72 hours, they lived in the back of that truck, parked in a gully overlooking the highway. They ate protein bars, drank warm water, and scanned every vehicle that passed, cross-referencing against a database of known IRGC license plates. On the 3rd day, at dawn, they saw it. Not a 3-car motorcade, but a 6-vehicle convoy. It was an IRGC military transport. Armored personnel carriers, jammers mounted on the roof. They were moving the nuclear brain, and they were moving him in a fortress. This is not an assassination, Asher, the logistics man, whispered, his hand on his weapon. This is a military assault. The plan is the same, Yael said, her voice cold. She was looking through binoculars at the approaching convoy. The method just got louder. She checked the cargo in the back of their truck. It was not a simple bomb. This was the contingency plan, inspired by real-world events that had, until now, only been rumored. It was a 1-ton remote-controlled AI-assisted machine gun bolted to the truck bed. It was linked to a satellite feed and a facial recognition database. Yael's team was not the trigger. They were the setup. The trigger was a man in a control room in Tel Aviv. They're 3 minutes out, Yael said. She drove the utility truck out of the gully and stalled it, blocking the right lane of the highway. A simple breakdown. The convoy would have to slow down and pass them, one by one. The highway was a ribbon of gray asphalt in the cold morning light. The Cosvin convoy, 6 vehicles deep, was a green snake moving at speed. When they saw the stalled utility truck, the lead APC slowed. The IRGC was paranoid. The lead vehicle stopped 100 meters back. Guards armed with assault rifles dismounted. They began to walk toward Yael's truck. They're not taking the bait, Asher hissed. It doesn't matter, Yael said. She was looking at a small tablet. The satellite is locked. In Tel Aviv, Rona, the analyst who had first heard the seismic whisper, was now the eye of the operation. She had a high-resolution, real-time feed from an Orion satellite. Her cursor hovered over the convoy. Target is mobile, Rona said. Vehicles 3 and 4 are identical. Both are reinforced sedans. Kaviani is in one of them. Yael, they're approaching, Asher said, watching the IRGC soldiers advance. Hold, Yael commanded. The IRGC commander in the lead APC was impatient. He barked an order. The convoy began to move, creeping around the stalled truck in the single open lane. As the third vehicle, the black armored sedan, drew parallel, it passed into the kill zone. Rona now, Erez ordered in the Tel Aviv command center. Rona's algorithm, cross-referencing thermal signatures with facial data from the ice cream photos, found him. Kaviani was in the passenger seat of the third car. Target acquired, Rona said. Yael's team, huddled in the cab of the truck, heard the thunk as the tarpaulin on the back of their truck was jettisoned. The machine gun, a 7.62 mm behemoth, activated. It did not spray, it fired. Guided by the AI, it fired a single 3-round burst at the APC's tires, disabling it. The convoy screeched to a halt. The guards who had been walking were now screaming, taking cover. The gun swiveled. Its AI brain, slaved to Rona's satellite designation, ignored the soldiers. It locked onto the third car's passenger window. It fired a burst of 20 armor-piercing rounds. The sound was not a rattle. It was a percussive thump, thump, thump. The armored glass shattered, then the man behind it. The AI-guided system ensured that only the target was hit. The driver of the car, though covered in glass, was untouched. It was over in 1.3 seconds. The AI targeted the fourth vehicle, firing into its engine block, disabling it. The convoy was dead in the water. In the cab of the truck, Yael, Asher, and the tech expert were already moving. They didn't wait to see the damage. They triggered a small incendiary charge in the back, destroying the gun, and sprinted from the stalled truck. A motorcycle hidden in the gully was their exit. As the IRGC convoy descended into chaos, firing wildly at the now burning truck, the 3-person Kedon team was already 2 miles away, vanishing into the landscape. In Tel Aviv, the satellite feed showed the scene. 2 disabled cars, 1 burning truck, and a black sedan with a surgically precise hole in its side. The package is delivered, Rona said, her voice shaking. The nuclear brain had been eliminated. The aftermath was a symphony of noise and silence. In Tehran, the state-run media called it a terrorist ambush, blaming a combination of ISIS, the Americans, and Zionist agents. They confirmed the death of a senior university professor and his security detail. The funeral was a state affair, a sea of angry faces chanting for revenge. In Geneva, the talks collapsed. The Iranian delegation, in outrage, walked out, accusing the West of negotiating in bad faith while murdering its scientists. The new era of diplomacy was dead on arrival. In Berlin, Hossein's daughter underwent successful surgery. Her father was never heard from again. He was either executed by the IRGC for his failure or extracted by Mossad to a new life of silent gratitude. The file was simply marked closed, but the real aftermath was in Qazvin. At the hidden lab, the scientists and IRGC commanders gathered in Kaviani's office. The place was a shrine. The whiteboard was a galaxy of equations, a complex web of physics and logistics that only he understood. They were the blueprints for the trigger, the cascade, the warhead. They stared at it, dumbfounded. It was a language without a translator. Kaviani had kept the map in his head and the key to the map on his whiteboard, but to anyone else it was gibberish. He was the only one who could connect the metallurgy in one factory to the electronics in another. The nuclear brain was gone. The program was not dead, but it was orphaned. It was a body without a mind. It would take them a year to decipher his notes, and a decade to find a mind as brilliant and as driven as Arash Kaviani's. In Tel Aviv, Erez stood on the balcony of his office, overlooking the city's skyline. He held no satellite photo, no trophy. There was no celebration. The cost had been enormous: a burned intelligence network, a collapsed political treaty, and a team of Kedon agents now hunted for the rest of their lives. Yael and her team were already in a new safe house, in a new country, awaiting new identities. They were ghosts, forever. Erez looked at the empty chair in his own office. He had eliminated his rival, but he knew the war was not over. He had not destroyed the idea of a bomb. He had merely delayed its creation. He had bought time. The how of the operation was a tactical masterpiece, but the why was a strategic burden. The hidden lab was now just a collection of empty rooms. But in Tehran, in some quiet university, Erez knew a new student was just now opening a physics book. A new brain was beginning to form. The chair in Kazvin was empty. The game, he knew, would simply reset.